Hello, everybody, to day 2 of Hackathon. Woo, 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 woo. Jazz hands is what Sandy would say. Jazz hands, that's what I learned from Sandy. It's all to jazz hands. You guys are like amazing. You know, did I mention at the kickoff call yesterday, oh my God, there might be a bit of chaos on day 1? Yeah. I think we had that, right? I think we had our share of first day chaos. So I just wanted to thank you all for being so gracious and flexible as we, you know, integrated some of the challenges. And we didn't really, so we had 8 challenges to start off, right? And we didn't really know where the energy was, what people wanted to hack, right? So, and it turned out there was more energy on some challenges than on others. So in an agile manner, we reacted to that about midday and integrated some of the challenges. So we have 5 remaining challenges right now. Yay, and they're all like really active. I think the anxiety in the workplace challenge could use some more hands if you have hands free. But other than that, I think everybody is up and running now. And so I just want to thank all of you participants for being so flexible in kind of moving along with us. I want to thank the challenge stewards whose challenges got integrated, that you're so flexible about taking on another challenge. I want to thank the mentors who have already started supporting all the channels with like really hands-on support. And last but not least, I want to thank the moderators. And you might not have seen all the behind the scenes yesterday, but they're like truly, truly heroic and just rolling with the punches, trying to integrate others into their channels and stuff. So I just want to give them a big hand of applause. If we can all just like clap to them. I mean, their efforts yesterday were just heroic. And I'm so excited for you guys, how you all pulled it off. Thank you so much. So that was sort of my little perspective on yesterday. Sandy, do you want to share sort of your day 1 reflections?
Yeah, what a fun day. I mean, really, like it was discovery, and I think we discovered a lot about the process. And I really think that everybody's flexibility was terrific. And there are some really juicy challenges to dig into. And I know that I'm excited about today, about ideation. And it's been really fun meeting everybody and hearing different perspectives, and rolling up our sleeves together. It's quite fun. So yay. Jazz hands.
Yes, so jazz hands. That's what I learned from Sandy, the jazz hands. Whenever I feel like down or whatever, Sandy does jazz hands, and that immediately. You have to laugh, right?
Yeah.
You have to laugh when Sandy does jazz hands. So. So the plan, so let's talk about the plan for today. Yeah, so you'll probably spend most of your day on ideation. What I will say is, so I want to give you a little bit of a preview for tomorrow for deliverables. So tomorrow, what you have to deliver or produce is a working prototype or, you know, MVP/solution, a 2-minute pitch video by 6 p.m. and all your project documentation by midnight. So my sense is if you can get started on the prototype today, is probably not a bad idea. Because if you tomorrow you have prototype building, creating a video, and the documentation, that's a lot. So think about that in your timeline. If you can get started on the prototype, that will mean less crunch time tomorrow. So they're just giving you those kind of reminders and things like that. What else? Oh, okay. So if you have a smartphone, like, and you see already my Slack notes pop up here, I recommend putting Slack on your phone, because all the channels that you've joined, you'll get pop-up messages. And I think it would be really helpful for the moderators. You know, sometimes they're trying to drive the process for all of you guys. And sometimes there's just a, you know, delay in responding because people are whatever doing other stuff, which is fine. But if you have the app and you get, you know, these messages pop up, at least you can just quickly respond to your moderator and say, hey, I can't do anything right now, or I'm working on this, right? Just let them know so they can plan accordingly. That would be great. And then, so yesterday was really heads down and we were kind of, trying to figure things out. But I think today we can start to have a little bit more fun. So, and also maybe start reflecting a little bit, taking a step back. So if you have some time in between, it would be really great to check out our Working Out Loud channel, and we'll post some fun prompts in there today, how you can engage beyond your individual team. So please post in there any kind of insights from your project, maybe even like fun pictures of you hacking, or a screenshot of your team doing a team call, so we can just get sharing across the channels, both content insights as well as, working out like how you're working, what you're doing, how you're having fun. And then please also start sharing that on Twitter using hashtag HR versus virus. And the reason for that is, yes, we want to share all our results and solutions with people in an open source way. But also, I think all the great work you're already doing in the different stages, right, could really benefit others already. So, all the great surveys that some of you launched yesterday is an example, right? But what are other things, other little nuggets that you can already share along the way on Twitter, other social media, so others can already get inspired by all the research you've been doing, all the ideas you've come up with, all the solutions you came up with, right? So start thinking about connecting across projects, start thinking about working out loud, start thinking sharing out. And did I say have fun today? Jazz hands. Okay. All right, so those were my announcements, sort of the plan for the day. And by the way, we'll take some of the questions again at the end here. So feel free to put those in the chat. So I wanted to do like what I did yesterday, our mini education segment. And today's topic, of course, is ideation, right? And let me just pull up. And so one of our awesome mentors, Jane Garza, has volunteered to do this little segment with me. And yes, she's unmuted, just checking. So Jane, hi, welcome. Thanks for doing this. And tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we'll dive into ideation.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to see how many faces there are on this call on a Saturday. So I work as I spent about 8 years in HR prior to my current role. I did HRS implementation and kind of culture and strategy, internal in-house HR. And then I joined a consultancy called Nobel, and now I help make culture change at organizations. So we've worked with companies like Warner Brothers and Calvin Klein and Google DeepMind, and basically we go in-house and are embedded and help them change culture. And so a lot of the work is spent talking about prototyping, not products, but new ways of working. How do we meet differently? How do we make decisions differently? How do we treat each other as team members differently? That kind of thing. And how do we prototype something new so that we can test it small with a small team and then scale it and build it out inside an organization? So that's what attracted me to this. Is I think a lot of the topics that we're covering in the hackathon are around not just like products and tools, but also behaviors. How do we change some norms and come out of COVID with some new habits and behaviors that we want to test out?
Yeah, very cool. So let's jump into ideation. Why do we ideate? Might be a stupid question, but let's start from the beginning.
No, I think it's a great question. I think, well, so if I think about, I'm sure a lot of people want to take back some of the skills that they're using this weekend back to the office, right? So when we think about your typical day-to-day office work and you're trying to launch a new project, if you don't do the ideation phase, what often happens is you start from the same place as you started many times before. So really the goal of ideation is to get you like thinking fresh, start from a new place rather than the same place, so that you can come up with some new ideas and end up in a new place as well, rather than ending up in the same old place every time. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is just really doubling down. Like if you see an opportunity somewhere to fill a need, ideation is the moment to start thinking about like, how would you fill that need? Not what is the right answer, but what are some potential options? So it's really just, it's kind of making sure that before we default to some assumptions or default to some obvious choices, it forces us to kind of step back and think about any other ways that we could approach this problem.
And that's interesting because we're so conditioned in our everyday business world to jump to solutions right away. I mean, we usually skip the step that we did yesterday, the discovery, usually altogether, because we already think we know the answers, right? And then we might do some ideation, but usually we jump to solution, and we get rewarded for that too in the business world, right? So I like this idea of, you know, first doing some research, broadening our thinking, and then getting kind of diverse inputs through ideation, and then coming up with solutions. And I don't know, maybe you can provide your perspective, but what I usually say to people when they have the feeling this prolongs the process and we can't act as quickly, my perspective is that actually you end up saving time at the end because you don't have to rework, you don't have to push things down people's throats because they're part of the process. So that's usually how I respond to that. What do you usually say about that? Does that take more time?
Yeah, I think to your point, a lot of the work that I do is working around resistance to change. One of the best formulas for resistance to change is including people in problem solving, like giving them the opportunity to actually give feedback before you give them the solution, or kind of, like you said, force the solution down their throat and legislate the new thing. So that's one way to save the time. The other thing is, like, ideation can be pretty quick and dirty. Today we're spending a day on it, but if you're talking about a project internally, it can be an hour before you jump into, so what are we going to do about it? It doesn't need to be this prolonged process. And I actually think that we have so little time in the office usually to spend brainstorming and getting creative, especially as HR people. I think we're often required to, like, think about the legal ramifications, think about the specifics, which leads to getting kind of locked into one type of way of processing something without too much brainstorming. Brainstorming can add a lot of energy too, and just, like, give you that momentum at the beginning of a project that you need. So although it takes an hour, I think it pays in dividends.
Yeah. And what are some of your favorite ideation techniques or tools, maybe especially virtual ones that we can give people on the way for today?
Sure. So I think in general, anytime you're starting, let's say, so for example, we're all about to kick off an hour-long brainstorming session with a group of people. I would say first thing is, like, set context, help people understand this is what we're going to do today. We're not going to make decisions on yes, no to this. We're going to just spend time. I think the initial model calls it, like, diverge and then converge, right? In every ideation meeting, there is a brainstorming portion and then there's a pruning portion. And it really helps for people to know which portion you're in. So when you're first in the brainstorming portion, spend the time just saying, like, no bad ideas, yes, and do whatever you want, like add on top, idea on top of idea. And then in the second half, we'll spend time saying, so out of these, which one hits our target best? Which one hits the outcome that we want best? Which one is the customer going to be most delighted by? And start to prune a little bit. It's really hard to do both gas and brake at the same time. So I think that's number one for me, is just kind of separate out how you're going to go about it. Whether it's asynchronous, so if you're doing it remotely and you want to do it over Slack, then just say, like, until 12 p.m. today, we're going to be doing the brainstorming portion, and then after that we're going to start to prune and decide what we want to move forward with. That would be number one. I think number two is if you're actually in a meeting and doing things live, not asynchronously, everyone thinks in different ways. So I would set up some moments for people to be able to process in different ways. What we often do with our clients is we'll start with, okay, we're going to do, like, a quick warm up, something to just get us all comfortable with each other. Because that's the other thing, is, like, ideation in a group does take some psychological safety and comfort with the people around you. And I think most of us are strangers, I'm assuming. And this is our first time interacting with one another. So spend a little bit of time warming up. The second thing I would do is just, like, separate out the time they're going to spend together by having a little bit of live brainstorming time, a little bit of, like, I might say, okay, Nicole, we're going to spend 5 minutes and me and you are just going to write down on our own in our notebook as many things as we can think of, and then we'll share them. And the benefit of that is, like, truly some people cannot go from, okay, here's a quick warm up to now tell me all of your ideas. They need the time to process. I'm one of those people personally. I like to, like, have the Post-its, write it down, think it out, map it, and then share. And what helps is you can go back and forth, right? You can do a little bit of silent on your own. You can share, you can go back to silent, you can do voting, you can There's a whole lot of different options that you can take when you're facilitating one of those meetings. But I would just think about how you can kind of separate that time out and really make it beneficial to everyone versus just one way of thinking.
Yeah, I love that. And it's always interesting because you might have extroverts and introverts in the same group. And then the extroverts, usually I get the feedback from, well, I really need to get others' input to get out my ideas. This writing down by myself individually is really hard for me. And then you get the feedback from the introverts. You know, I can't just shout out things, you know, I need to think first. So it's kind of always interesting as a facilitator how we kind of merge approaches that fit both personality types.
Right. And then in terms of tools, since we are all virtual, we probably want a tool to use for this. I saw some people using Mural yesterday. Mural, M-U-R-A-L. There's also Miro, which sounds very similar. M-I-R-O. There's also Trello, which also sounds pretty similar. But that also has the options of voting, and it's a free account if you don't have a paid one. You can also use like good old Google Docs if you want, and just separate out the parts of the page to like, okay, ideation here, silent writing here, voting here, and have, you know, some format for voting, add an X on the things that you like. So it doesn't really matter what the tool is, honestly. I tend to lean more towards, I think often when people start to work remotely or work remotely in teams, they think about like, what's the perfect tool for us? I don't think it matters. I think what matters is you have the right rules around it and the right like rhythms around it. So as long as you can make that specific, we're going to use this thing in this way, I think it'll help everyone find the right way to interact with it.
Yeah, I like that. And then, so who should be included in ideation?
So I think in a brainstorming meeting, you probably want no more than like 7 to 10 people. And you want it as diverse as possible. So ideally as many voices as possible. The reason we were talking earlier about like have some silent moments, have some writing moments, have some moments to discuss, is because you do want that diverse thinking. So not only do you want a diverse room, but you also want equal voices. So whatever you can do to make sure that everyone is participating fairly equally is really important. Otherwise, that diverse room doesn't really help you, right? And then the third thing is, if you can get your end user and customer, I think that's always helpful too, is have them there with you to give some input on what would be helpful to them in particular for a specific situation.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much about this little mini education series continues in the segment on education. I think there were a lot of great takeaways that people can use today. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to.
Yay.
Great.
And so let's jump into questions. If any of you guys have any questions as we launch into day 2 today. Just also want to mention, if there is somebody on the call who still has not decided on a challenge, this is not too late to do that today. You know, we can still jump into ideation. As we just heard, the more diverse voices these folks get in ideation, the better. So let us know, and if you're in Slack, you can ping me if you haven't decided on a challenge. If you're not yet in Slack, you should have gotten a link through Eventbrite. If not, just respond to Eventbrite and we'll get you sorted out. Okay, questions are coming in. Somebody's background looks awesome. Oh, Vicky, your background looks awesome is the feedback we're getting here. I think that is one of those, you know, advances with Zoom or whatever these days, that you can choose your own background. Any other questions? Looks like you are all up. There's one question coming in. Oh, Lila is asking. Hi, Lila. She is a mentor. So she's asking if mentors should align with one particular group. Not necessarily. You know, I think maybe you can pick one group that you're like supporting, maybe more hands-on, you know, because I think all of the groups could use some more hands and brains. But then depending on your skill set, I would say you can still sort of rotate and see where you can lend support based on your skill set. Okay, everybody thinks about being on the beach because of Vicky's background. And so, yeah, so Barbara, so there might be some, you know, you might be flexible in sort of what you're doing and when, Barbara, but I would say try not to prolong the research too long. You know, I know there is the feeling maybe you want to be as comprehensive as possible in the research, right? You don't have to feel that way. We only have 72 hours. So at one point, you know, make the decision to move on because you have enough to move on. You know, it's more important that we get to a certain result than comprehensively researching the topic. So, you know, make that judgment call when you just, you know, stop and say, we have enough and let's move on. But I leave that up to you as moderators. Just make sure that you're sort of balancing that, right? Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. All right, so then let's do our final freeze frame. So I thought for today, and so again, if you guys could turn on your video for that, since today is all about creativity, I thought maybe you could pick like an item that's on your desk or in your office or wherever you are that makes you feel creative. You know, what is like an item that you maybe look at or something like that, and then we'll hold up that item. Everybody's looking around. What do I have? So look around a little bit. If you don't have an item, you can draw something on a Post-it or something like that. But do you have like something around you that makes you feel getting into the creative zone? So let's give you guys a few seconds. And then again, I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to do the thing, and then I'll ask you to hold. Okay, cool. Well, it looks like everybody got stuff. Okay. All right. Are you guys ready? All right. 1, 2, 3, freeze. Thank you. Okay, happy hacking, guys. Bye.
Have a great hacky
Bye.
day.